Welcome to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast, the podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls getting whooped on in the fourth quarter by the Orlando Magic thanks to Desmond Bane as the Orlando Magic pull off the 125-120 victory. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers and trying to become one of the biggest Orlando Magic podcasts here on the YouTube platform. So with that being said, make sure that you hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And let's go ahead and get right into it. Desmond Bane, 37 points, 18 points in the fourth quarter, becomes the first Orlando Magic player since 2004, Tracy McGrady, who did it 3 times in a row, to score 37 or more points in consecutive games. And the Orlando Magic needed every single bucket of this. This was a game where they struggled from beyond the arc, only 9 of 33. And this was a game where they did not necessarily dominate in any one area. The one that does stand out is fast break points. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the Magic defense. But other than that, a lot of these other statistics were very, very close. The rebounding margin, they won 52-48. In terms of the points in the paint, it was 62-54. The second chance points, 15-9. Even points off of turnovers was 25-19. And at one point, this Chicago Bulls team was up by as many as 15 points. And Desmond Bane made it happen. Got to the free throw line 10 times, was perfect from the free throw line. Also knocked down 3 threes in this game, something that's going to progressively get better for him. He was 3 of 7 from beyond the arc in this game, along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. And I believe he also collected a few offensive rebounds in this game, which is huge. Other Orlando Magic players who played really well, Anthony Black with 22 points and 9 rebounds off the bench, knocked down a pair of threes himself. And Franz Wagner, the model of consistency, 25 points and 6 rebounds on 11 of 18 shooting from the field. Didn't knock down any threes in this game, but just kind of was the same old Franz Wagner. And I don't mean that in a negative way. He's somebody who I think you can kind of reliably lean on to score anywhere between 18 to 25 points a night, and he just continues to be able to pour that in on this Magic offense and allows you to feel confident that he's going to at least give you the very best version of himself on a night-to-night basis. And he has a chance to go for 30 plus as well, but this consistency of him grabbing, anywhere between, 6 to 7 boards, dropping anywhere between 20 to 28 points a night, that's something that I think Orlando Magic fans have slowly become accustomed to as we've watched Franz Wagner develop over the years. Someone else who notably played well, I would say, and I would use the word well loosely, but I think also was effective, was Wendell Carter Jr., who had 17 points and 6 rebounds in this game as well. So let's talk about the Orlando Magic defense, because that's actually the thing I'm a little bit more excited about. The rim protection in this game was huge. Huge in this game. 11 blocks for the Magic as a team. Goga Bitadze led the way with 4. For context, the Chicago Bulls had 4 blocks as a team in this game. Goga, again, had 4 by himself. Also, second chance points. I mentioned it earlier. It was 15-9, but that's huge because being able to protect the paint as far as not allowing a team to recollect an offensive rebound and get back up, that's big time, because a lot of those blocks come in situations, a lot of those blocks and a lot of those contests come in situations off of a potential offensive rebound, trying to go back up and getting met at the rim. And that's huge because this Orlando Magic team is desperately trying to find real consistent rim protection, because no disrespect to Wendell Carter Jr., but you guys have mentioned it in the comment section before. That is one of the biggest areas where he lacks. On a night-to-night basis, he's very inconsistent as a rim protector, and it's something that's always kind of been a question mark around Wendell, because although he's an above-average rebounder, although he can be a very good defender in space, although he has a very nice soft touch around the basket as somebody who, when you put him on the low block, you can give the ball to and have him be a play finisher here and there. The other thing that really, really always tends to spur up questions is whether or not he can consistently protect the rim. Well, in this game, this was a game where every single starter except for Desmond Bane had a block. Anthony Black had 2 blocks as well, and Jonathan Isaac also came in his 7 minutes. 1 point, 2 rebounds, 1 of 4 from the free throw line. We won't talk about that right now, but he also contributed a block, and when he was on the floor was a +7. For context, Anthony Black was a +25 and Tyus Jones was a +13 to lead the team. Nonetheless, I think it's very important to note that this team's ability to protect the paint was what brought them back in this game, because Chicago was hitting their threes. Chicago was hitting their threes. Again, they were 16 of 37, 43% from beyond the arc. So the ability to protect the paint in a real way. And I'm not necessarily saying in terms of the difference in points in the paint, because like I said, that gap wasn't that significant. But the ability to block shots or deter shots or get deflections and create fast break opportunities, it was huge in a game like this against Chicago, because I mentioned in the preview the idea of needing to kind of cut the water off from Josh Giddey as a facilitator and slow down Nikola Vucevic. And although I don't think that necessarily worked out in their favor, I do think one thing that did work out in the Orlando Magic's favor was essentially playing the high up-tempo offense game that the Chicago Bulls love to play better than the Bulls did. And the reason why, or the facilitator of that, was the constant pressure on the defense to create turnovers, to create deflections, to create opportunities where loose balls would come up in favor of the Orlando Magic and create opportunities for the Magic to get out and run. Something that the Chicago Bulls, when they started the season off and they had a 98 point whatever defensive rating, the best defensive rating in the league, that's when a lot of their up-tempo play style, their track and field play style that they lean on so heavily, that's when it shined the most. And the Orlando Magic's ability to adopt that play style, right? And I mean, really, not even adopt, because in a sense the Orlando Magic have been trying to play that style all season long. But again, they don't have a point guard that moves the ball the way someone like Josh Giddey does. But to play that play style and outmatch the Chicago Bulls in said play style while platooning a handful of bigs, which I think is very important, right? You have Goga play, you have Wendell play, you have Noah Pinda play, you had Jonathan Isaac play, and you still were able to keep up with the pace of play of the Chicago Bulls, I think cannot be under discussed, because that's something that's going to translate. That's something that's going to translate throughout the course of an 82-game season. I think that's something that's also going to make them much better when it comes to the postseason, as far as how they match up well against different teams, right? Your ability to play up-tempo and meet them at the apex, I think, is just as impactful as the Orlando Magic's ability to be able to play in a half-court setting and meet a team with physicality. I think the fact that they were able to go from, let's look at it like this, right? You go from playing a more physical, hard-nosed team like the Detroit Pistons, and you meet them at their level, and you outcompete, and you win that game. And then you play a completely different team, a more finesse-style, up-tempo, running-gun offense team like the Chicago Bulls, and you meet them at their apex, you meet them at their level, and you outperform them. I think that shows the adaptability of this Orlando Magic team, and it starts with what they're able to do on the defensive end. I think that's so huge for this Orlando Magic team, and I think it's going to be one of those things that, again, Desmond Bane, I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more. It's not really in relation to the Orlando Magic defense, but I do think it's a Magic philosophy thing, right? Desmond Bane, this is why you trade for Desmond Bane. Games like this is why you trade for Desmond Bane, because you have the defensive infrastructure to keep you in games. You have the defensive infrastructure to keep you, as the Orlando Magic, you clearly have the defensive infrastructure to keep you into games. The question was, where does your offense go? Franz gives you 25 points. Anthony Black gives you over 20. You're missing Paolo Banchero, and you need somebody else to come bring you along, to bring you back into this game where at one point you were down by double figures, right? Down by as many as 15. And this is why you go out and get Desmond Bane, because with no Paolo, you need somebody else to come along offensively to help this team reestablish themselves when they're kind of having a slow start, when somebody's having a rough night. Again, this was a game where one of their starters, Tristan da Silva, went 0 for 0 points in 20 minutes, right? And that's important to really factor in, because when we sit down and we talk about what was the point of the Orlando Magic trading for Desmond Bane, was the draft picks worth every ounce of whatever we would get from Desmond Bane as far as his productivity on the floor, right? Is Desmond Bane, a non-all-star, somebody who honestly is worth that kind of package, not knowing whether or not he would really be able to meet the hype. And the reality of the situation is that games like these are why he becomes so special, because when you're without Paulo, when you need an offensive engine next to Franz, when you need somebody to be a spark plug that can take over in the fourth quarter, this can be a guy that you can rely on. I think it's also important to mention that Desmond Bane is also, games like these are a representation of, again, a flaw in the Orlando Magic being that lack of a off the bench microwave scorer. See, Anthony Black has had to play that role without that necessarily being a role he's best suited for. I think he's a good two-way player, and I think somebody that's really come along. Again, I believe he's a most improved player candidate. But his archetype, right, specifically fitting for this team, is not to be your six man of the year, offensive engine off the bench, shot creator. That's not his archetype. It's great that he's been able to fill that role, but that's not necessarily his archetype. And even if he's being established as that, then we need somebody else to be able to overtake the archetype that he's provided, which is the 3-and-D wing type that's also being able to provide a little bit of ball handling and ball movement, things like that. Maybe that's what Tristan da Silva is supposed to be when Paulo Banchero comes back healthy. That's the tricky part about trying to evaluate this team while they're still, their best player is injured. But all that to say that I think this Orlando Magic team, they're really coming along. And I think we're going to talk about their defense so much more throughout the course of the year, because at the end of the day, the identity of this Orlando Magic team built in defense. Say whatever you want about Jamaal Mosley. And don't get me wrong, we've all had our trepidations on this podcast. I will not sit here and be a hypocrite. But say whatever you want about Jamaal Mosley. One thing that we've been able to learn during this stretch is that if there's one thing he can do, if he can't do anything else, he knows how to get young guys to guard. If he can't do anything else, he knows how to get young guys to guard. I think everybody in the comment section, drop Jamaal Mosley coaches defense in the comment section if you got this far in the podcast. You guys know Mose can coach defense. And as long as this team is built off of a defensive infrastructure, something that's been established and been establishing over the last 3 to 4 years now, as long as this team and their identity is rooted in defense, they are going to be good. What gets them to great, what gets them to now where they're in the conversation for being a top 10 offense in the NBA right now, is having guys like Desmond Bane on the floor. Seeing the development from someone like Anthony Black offensively off the bench, who I said before the season was going to be one of the biggest X factors, if not the biggest X factor for this team this year. That's where you take the leap offensively, is Anthony Black's development, Tristan da Silva's development as a knockdown shooter, Franz Wagner staying consistent if not improving, Desmond Bane coming out and showing why he's worth the trade package that the Orlando Magic put together, Paulo Banchero, when he gets back healthy, being able to put this team on his back in certain situations where they need the best player to be the best player. That's how you fix the offense side. Where Jamaal Mosley was being questioned the most is the same way you would say about a NFL head coach in the National Football League, right? Whose background is rooted in defense. If you are an NFL head coach and your defense is the 5th worst in the NFL, people are going to question how well you can do your job as a head coach when your whole bread and butter that landed you a head coaching job is making a strong defense. Jamaal Mosley, his bread and butter that has made him a staple for this Orlando Magic franchise over the last 4 to 5 years has been his ability to get young guys to guard. And when the season started and they were a bottom 10 defense in the league, we weren't even worried about why wasn't this team clicking offensively. We knew they had to integrate Desmond Bane into the lineup, and so that was going to take some time. The question was, why was this team so terrible defensively when all the personnel outside of Desmond Bane is practically the exact same as it was the past few years? With that being the case, they're starting to get their mojo back. If not, they've gotten their mojo back over the last 10 or so games, and it's really reflecting. And I think this Magic defense is going to be the core. It should be. Let me not even say I think. It should be the core of what ends up getting them back into the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. And I think this Orlando Magic team genuinely, off the strength of their defense alone, and I think the offense is coming around graciously, right? But I think off the strength of their defense alone, this team is going to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference this year. Mark my words. And I know that you guys feel that same way. Even for my pessimistic Orlando Magic fans that are worried about how this team looks when they reintegrate Paolo Banchero, don't worry about that. I can't tell you why, not just yet, because I need to see him on the floor and see what it looks like before I can really calm those nerves. But I genuinely believe off the defensive side of the ball alone, this team is going to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. They are going to get it. They are going to get it back, and they are going to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. With that being said, I saw a bizarre NBA trade proposal online. And I know some of you guys hate this. Some of you guys love this. It's a mixed bag. And you know what? Because it's a mixed bag, I'm going to keep doing it. And we're going to just, we're going to rock through it together. Because if it's an article I saw, it's an article that some of you have seen, right? So, and for the people who haven't seen the article, this brings to the attention an interesting concept. So I saw online the idea of a trade package centered around the Orlando Magic acquiring LA Clippers All-Star James Harden. And I was like, interesting. What's the catch? So let's read the article together since we can really process it. Because for context, I try my very best not to delve into these trade topic articles too much before the podcast, so it's more of a genuine reaction. So I have not read this article. I was looking up Orlando Magic news, and Los Angeles Clippers trade James Harden to Orlando Magic popped up as a news tag, and obviously I knew it wasn't an actual trade. It was a trade proposal, but I'm like, okay, bet, save the article. We'll bring it to the podcast. Let's see what the people have to say. So I have not read this article yet, so it's interesting to see. Let's see what they have to say about how that trade would go about and what the fit looks like. It says, so things have not worked out for the Los Angeles Clippers. Their plan of having a veteran roster has led them having a losing record of 5-15, and with no encouraging signs, it may be the time for them to completely restructure. For the Clippers to accomplish this, they have to consider making trades to reshape the roster. One trade they could make is sending James Harden to another team, as he has been their most productive player and can earn them the most value in return. I mean, he probably is their most valuable trade asset right now, respectfully, even at his advanced age. Maybe him and then Ivica Zubac. With this, the team that should look to trade for James Harden upon him becoming available is the Orlando Magic. The trade package for this setup would be the Los Angeles Clippers receive Jalen Suggs, Jet Howard, and a 2026 first-round pick. Not sure how that works. James Harden would come to the Orlando Magic via that and a LA Clippers second pick. I want to double check something on whether or not the Orlando Magic have the squeeze for that. Right, a 2026 first rounder. 2026 first rounder. They gave up their 2026 first rounder in the trade for Desmond Bane, if I'm not mistaken. And see, this is why I said we have to check. This is why I said I want to do this live on the podcast, because I feel like it's very important to not just see these trades and just take them for face value. So yeah, according to Real GM, the Orlando Magic do not have any. It says two most favorable, less favorable, Phoenix and Washington. Yeah, nope. So this Orlando Magic team does not even have a 2026 first. They have their own second rounder in 2026. I'm going to check something else as well. And again, we're doing this live on the podcast because of the fact that I feel like these are the type of things that when you see these trades, see, as much as people see that I like to bring up these potential trade scenarios on the podcast, I also think that it's good to openly poke holes in these trades, not just based off of the fit, but making sure they're actually feasible as well. So yeah, the Orlando Magic, their first round pick as of right now would actually be slotted to go to the Charlotte Hornets. Their 21st overall pick would be slotted to go to the Charlotte Hornets as of right now. So the Orlando Magic do not have a first round pick in 2026 to begin with. So, based off of this alone, this trade package is not doable. Now, if you want to move it, maybe there's a mistype there, and they decide to say you would move your 2027 first rounder. They do own their own 2027 first round pick in that section, but I don't believe they're allowed to move it because then they would be out a first round pick in 3 consecutive years, 2026, 2027, and 2028, who that draft pick goes to the Portland Trailblazers via the Memphis Grizzlies. So I actually believe that unless you're moving your 2029 or you're moving your 2023, actually no. You can't move the 2029 either because if you move 2029, 2030 was traded in that Memphis trade for Desmond Bane as well. So it's either your 2031 pick or you can't make this deal. So let's reroute it, right? This is why we work on it in real time. Let's reroute it. So they clearly did it wrong. They said 2026 and the Orlando Magic do not have a 2026 first rounder. Not theirs, not anyone's. So let's say it was the 2031 pick because it's the only one that's available just in terms of making this trade work. But clearly, that alone, Jalen Suggs, Jet Howard 2026 couldn't happen. Jalen Suggs, Jet Howard 2031 could happen in exchange for James Harden and a second round pick via the Clippers. Now, the rest of the article says, for the Clippers, the trade signals a significant pivot. While Harden brought undeniable star power, this deal shows the Clippers are looking to retool and inject some new energy into the lineup. This would be a move that prioritizes flexibility and looks towards the future. The Orlando Magic, on the other hand, are making a massive statement. Acquiring a player of Harden's caliber is a clear indication that they are ready to compete at the highest level. He's a player who can change the game on both ends. On both ends is interesting, but okay. And his ability to create for himself and others is something Orlando has been looking for. Harden brings a veteran presence and a scoring punch that could immediately boost their offense. The Magic already had 2 key players in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, but adding James Harden propels the team to have a well-rounded trio. That's a very odd breakdown, right? I think everybody would agree that's a very odd breakdown. Number one, Desmond Bane's still on the team. And although James Harden is a much better passer, which would make him a very seamless point guard fit for this team as far as a facilitator, he still demands the ball in terms of his overall on-ball usage in order to be effective. It's why he's been so good so far this season, is because they've been able to play old-school James Harden ball, especially with Bradley Beal going down with a season-ending injury and Kawhi Leonard being unavailable until very recently, right? So that's number one. The other thing that obviously makes it very odd is it's taking into account that this team needs more scoring, and that's not really the issue for the Orlando Magic. The issue is being able to continue to move the ball. The other issue that there is this team is relying heavily on their defensive identity to thrive in order to make them play the best of their ability. And James Harden is not effective on both sides of the ball, as the article stated. It's actually very wrong. He is a one-dimensional player that has glimpses of brilliance on the defensive end, as a guy who can poke the ball out, as a guy who can play passing lanes pretty well, things of that nature. But as far as anything further than that, you would desperately have to put someone like a Jalen Suggs, who's being traded in this situation, next to him, or put someone like an Anthony Black next to him, because otherwise you're taking a massive defensive hit in the backcourt by having him and Desmond Bane next to each other. So those are the first 2 points. And I think the third point, and this is actually arguing against the Clippers doing it, is the Clippers' grand master plan is to keep their finances clean so that they can hit the full reset button with no real qualms whatsoever in 2027 when that crazy free agency class becomes available, right? Bringing in Jalen Suggs makes them youthful, a little bit more youthful by bringing in Jalen Suggs and Jet Howard this season, but it would instantaneously add a larger salary on their books that would still be signed through 2027, which is the whole antithesis of what their actual plan is, making that a pretty bad idea on their front to pursue something like that. So I do not think the Orlando Magic would make this trade, because I don't know if the 2031 pick is worth trading for a guy that essentially, in James Harden at his age, even with him playing as well as he is, do you give up on Jalen Suggs and the defensive upside and the energy aspect and everything that he brings to the table? Do you give up on that and the fact that he signed much further long term? Because Jalen Suggs is signed past 2027, if I'm not mistaken. But James Harden, on the other hand, becomes available much sooner than that. I'm gonna double check that as I'm talking, because I don't want to misinform, but I also do believe that that's true, which in the case of this team, talking about the LA Clippers, would not benefit them whatsoever to make that kind of exchange. So in this case, I'm on Spo Track. In this case, yeah, Jalen Suggs is signed all the way up until through the 2029-2030 season. So he would be on their books for a $29 million descending contract, thankfully, in the favor of the Orlando Magic currently. He's paid $35 million now, but it's a descending contract. 32 next year, 29 after, 26 after that, 26 after that. So that works up until his age 28 season. But you would have Jalen Suggs signed through the next 4.5 seasons, if you count this year, as a Clippers team that wants to keep your books clean for 2 seasons from now. So I don't think the Clippers do it either, just based off of what their financial trajectory is. Because Jalen Suggs is not big enough of a name to be like, oh yeah, that's a contract that we would be willing to have as a young player building block piece for our next version of the LA Clippers. I don't think that's the name they're looking for. If that's the move they're gonna make, I think that's when you get the Ja Morant, the LaMelo Ball, the Darius Garland, right? That's when the Trae Young. That's when you call those names to take that kind of swing where you're like, okay, we're gonna end up committing some serious money to 2027 to one player. Maybe we'll still have the scratch to get another max player next to him, but this does take away a little bit from our plan for what's to come in 2027. But because this is a young all-star player, it's worth it. But Jalen Suggs, although he's an all-NBA defensive player, I don't think he's the draw the Clippers jump off the cliff to make that move for. I think we all agree that this trade doesn't make sense. And I'm glad that I was able to kind of break it down live. And maybe I should do that a little bit more often, where I really get into the weeds of the trade construction. Because, again, very, very easily we were able to poke a hole in that trade construction within the very first minute or two of reading it, simply off the fact that they referenced a draft pick that simply the Orlando Magic can't trade because they don't have it, right? And so people love to put together these fake trades, but they have to make sense. And I've always said that. I've always said that one of the biggest things when it comes to me bringing up these fake trades to you guys, not just simply to share an interesting name to flip so you can put somebody else on the roster, but also, like, what is the sense of it? Not just for the Orlando Magic, but for the other team as well. Like, why do they do it? Why do they say yes? Why do they say yes to this idea? Why do the Sacramento Kings practically just give away Malik Monk or give away Keon Ellis? Or I'm sure they wouldn't be as mad about giving up Dennis Schroeder, depending on what they get back. Because, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, for Dennis Schroeder with this team and the certain connections on the team and stuff like that, makes it a little bit easier for the Orlando Magic to want him. But for the Sacramento Kings, it's like, they're not, I don't think they're so attached to him that if they could get like a young player and bad salary as a filler, and second, I'm sure they wouldn't be spazzing over Dennis Schroeder because they know he's not worth a first round pick. But like, those other guys you can have a question mark about. Keon Ellis, I think you can get for the cheap because his contract is so minuscule and he's up to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. But you can prey on his 3-point shooting and his defensive upside as things that you could sell as a reason to maybe not want to just sell it for a bag of chips. Or Malik Monk has 6-man of the year upside, which makes it where maybe you don't want to just sell him for very, very little, right? So you have to make it make sense. Just because a trade comes up and it sounds like, oh, there's a new player that could be on our team, doesn't always mean they should be. This is a situation where I think I think the name James Harden sounds good at the Orlando Magic. Sounds good with the Orlando Magic because facilitating point guard with the upside to score, gets to the free throw line heavily. That would give you another guy who can get to the free throw line anywhere between 6 to 8 times per game. Now you have Paolo, Franz, Desmond Bane, and James Harden, all guys who can get to the free throw line anywhere between 6 to 8, even 10 times a game on a night-to-night basis. So there's a lot of rim pressure, there's a lot of scoring ability, and there's a lot of ball handling, which is huge for a team like this that needs to take strides offensively, but they've already been doing that. So, no deal. I think very safely would say no deal. And I would say for the actual trade package they presented, I would also say not just no deal, but for the trade package they presented, doesn't make sense either. So, with that being the case, flush down the toilet. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below. If we changed it to the 2031 pick instead of the 2026, because that doesn't make sense, and it was Jet Howard and Jalen Suggs for James Harden in a second round pick, like, would you do it? Like, interestingly enough, like, obviously we poked holes in it and I named a million reasons why I think neither side would really go for it. But like, as an Orlando Magic fan, would you be interested in it? Me personally, I think the name value is an interesting idea, but I think the fit value doesn't really make as much sense. And that's why I would probably say no. Me personally, I would say no. Last but not least, let's talk about a couple of comments in the comment section from last podcast. Not too many from what I saw, so that works out perfectly fine. But neither here nor there. I always enjoy reading you guys' comments, and I saw a couple of people that are also first-time commenters, I believe, as well. So, Luis Rosario, 9522, per usual. Shout out to you, my guy. Franz and TDS is winning with Germany this summer. Put them on the experience of an NBA team that would have made the NBA Finals. I'm saying it's a special thing to be able to play competitive basketball against grown men that are playing for their country in what is considered a postseason setting, right? And winning a championship that should not be undermined. Totally agree with you on that one. JW28, J.I. and Mo. I hope we see that before we move him. But I wouldn't be surprised if Goga is the option to move first, unless they also think that him and Mo play together well. They do play together well. We've seen that in the past season, that when those two are on the floor together and healthy, we have one of the better scoring benches in the league. And I'm not saying that has a lot to do with Mo Wagner, but I'm saying Mo Wagner definitely helps facilitate that, paired with like the fact that him and Goga Batazde like were just absolute gangbusters in transition last when they were healthy, when they were both healthy together, right? So I think that's huge. I think J.I. and Mo is a good fit defensively as well, because you have an energy hustle guy in Mo, and then you have somebody who can be a good shot blocker around the rim in J.I. Goga might be the first to go in its own right out of the upside value he has. Also being signed through this season, and I believe one more season before becoming an unrestricted free agent. So that makes him very interesting as an option. The question is whether or not Goga makes enough money to really get moved for anything of true value. That's why J.I. always comes up as the first guys, because he makes $15 million. Goga makes single digits, and single digits to go get somebody that could be like a super effective addition to this team is going to take you having to aggregate a lot more with Goga in order to make it happen. I mean, you might have to aggregate something with J.I. in order to make the move as a sweetener, right? A Jet Howard or something like that as a sweetener, just simply because, Jonathan Isaac does have an injury history. He doesn't play more than 15 minutes a game, and he's somebody who is, although he has very good defensive upside, I think you have to be able to rely on him in a very specific manner. he's somebody that still has enough upside where all you have to do is really attach some kind of youthful piece next to him to sweeten the deal up and you're fine. Versus Goga, the issue is not necessarily anything related to like his youth or his productivity. It's just, does he make enough money to get anything back of real value, right? Eagle 8, shout out to you. I think this is the first time I've seen you comment. If not, welcome back. If so, welcome. Bane has answered the question. Black has matured into a gamer. The reserve bigs will determine how far the Magic go. Hey, J.I., Goga, Mo when healthy, Noah Penda. Totally agree with you. This is one of those where if our full front court rotation, specifically the center position, is full strength and plays to the caliber that I think a lot of us believe, this team is gonna be OC. They're gonna be OC. For those who have seen it on TikTok. If not, then I just made myself look like a clown. Either way. Jant01. If Paolo doesn't make an All-NBA team, isn't he going to miss out on all that Supermax bonus money? If I was him, I would be trying to come back ASAP. Funny enough, and Luis Rosario pokes fun and says, well, he's going to have to make up the money in the summer with more commercials. Funny enough, there's a thing, and I was thinking about this when I saw this comment actually, in passing when I was putting together the stuff for the show, which is that in a weird way, that's an incentive of him not making the All-NBA team this year, for example. I'm not exactly sure whether or not that would hurt him over the course of the entirety of his contract because he's not making the All-NBA team while currently on the Supermax extension. He already signed the Supermax extension, but for those who are not aware, it doesn't kick in until next season. He's still on his original $15 million from his original rookie scale deal. So I don't necessarily know for sure if him missing All-NBA would hurt his Supermax money, because I don't know if it's about you making All-NBA once you're on the contract, or whether it's going into the extension. If it's going into the extension, it does hurt it. If it's not, then obviously it doesn't. But I think another thing is, if you're an Orlando Magic fan, you want Paolo Banchero to make All-NBA, but actually him not making his incentives actually better benefits the Orlando Magic's books, to be honest, right? Like, you want Paolo to play at an All-NBA level, but I don't know if you necessarily want him to make the All-NBA team this year if the incentives are considered, because of the fact that if you're being honest here, again, I read them out to you when we talked about the other trade, and I think that was a perfect segue in a way to making more sense of this, because I didn't do all of this earlier on when I was preparing for the show. But your next available draft pick you can actually trade is in 2031. You don't have a draft pick you can viably trade, at least not right now, and I believe not next season either. You don't have a draft pick you can viably trade until 2030, unless you're moving the 2031 pick. So this is a team that's not going to be able to do very much as far as free agency and things of that nature are considered as it is. So think about some of the guys that are coming down the pipeline you have to consider, right? Tristan da Silva, Anthony Black. Do you bring back Goga Batiste? Right? Like, these are the questions you have to ask yourself. And Paolo getting all of his money takes away from the rest of that pot as far as the salary cap's concerned. We want Paolo back healthy, obviously, right? Let's not lose the big picture here. At least from my perspective, I'm going to speak for myself. From my perspective, we want Paolo Banchero back. But financially, it would be beneficial for him not to make the All-NBA bonuses. Financially. And I don't think it would be a significant bump. I think there's like a couple of different things that affect his numbers. I don't know exactly how much it would knock off, but saving any kind of money for this Orlando Magic team would be very helpful, given that they don't have a ton of wiggle room and they don't have any real draft capital moving forward. Money Sniper Stone, I know this is the first time I've seen your comments, so shout out to you, boss, and you gave me something really heavy to work with. We might end up having to come back to some of these other comments later on a different show. But Money Sniper Stone says, I think the NBA Cup means a lot more. Yes, this is what we're going to end on, because this is in reference to one of my biggest questions from last podcast. He said, I think the NBA Cup means a lot more than we think, just because It's such a new concept, but players are still out there playing for a bag at the end of the day. I think it's really good for the Magic to make a push in the cup play and for them to take it serious to show the potential and capability this squad got in their bag. AB, TDS, Jet all coming together. We are looking great for the future. We just really need Mo back, I think. Would love to try and dump I'm assuming you meant to say dump Tyus and Isaac somewhere for some real potential draft capital or even another solid big man. Jonathan Isaac is a dog, but I think his time is up here and he can strive somewhere else that can truly use good minutes out of a versatile defender like Isaac. And somebody commented on underneath, or it was actually him auto-correcting himself saying Tyus, yes. So I think that's a great way to end the podcast, with my main response to that being that I do believe this team was on the right track. I do believe that the NBA Cup, especially for a young team, is a very underrated tool. It's a very underrated tool within the season to create a certain motivation factor for a team, especially a younger team that's looking to try to prove things to themselves, to the rest of the conference, to the national media, right? Playing for for their next contract, playing for a contract extension, right? Auditioning for a chance to be a starter on a different team, even, right? If you're talking about guys like Goga Batazde or Jonathan Isaac or Jet Howard, right? Like you're positioning yourself in a lot of different ways. You're playing the long game with stuff like this, with seasons like these, and using a catalyst like the NBA Cup, for example. It can be a very useful tool, not just for the team aspect, but also the individual aspect on the team in terms of some of the agendas at play. And for a young team more than ever, I think it's so important to take something like the NBA Cup seriously, because it can be helpful to boosting a team's morale, their overall self-esteem, the camaraderie aspect of it. And it's a proving ground, because even though it does not have playoff implications, it has playoff atmosphere. And that's a great way to get reps in earlier on in the year to prepare you for the bigger stage, the biggest stage that is the NBA playoffs. With that all being said, this has been another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. Make sure you hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Peace.